מזמור לדוד, אדוני מי יגבר לכו. מזמור לדוד, אדוני מי יגבר לכו. ישכון בקודשך, הלך תמים ופועל צדק ודבר אמת ובגוי. תזבוב. לרגל על לשון אליאס לראיו, וכפו לנסק ללוי.
לרגל על לשון אליאס חרפו לנסק
נבזבנו ממו, וסירי אדוני יכבה, נשבע לו ולא יומיר. כסבוי לא נוסף ונשב, ושויך אדרנו כי לא אלוקך.
כסבוי לא נוסף ונשב,
אוי סי לא ימות לא אלוק.
אוי סי לא ימות
מכתום לדוד, שמרני כי חוסי סיבוך. אמרת לאדוני, אדוני אותו, תבוא סיבה לא לכו. לקדוש מה שבארץ עמו, ודירא כוחל צבו. יבוא עצמו יסומכם אורו, ועל השיחו נזכה מדום, ובעל עשו שמו יסום עשו. אדוני מנוס חלקי וחויסי, עתותוי מגוי גולי. חבולים נופלו לי בנימים, אף נחלו שופרו לוי. אבורך אדינו אשר יוצאון יפלי אלוהי איסוני חליוי סוי. הישביס ידינו לנגדי סומק ממיני בעלמו. מוכן סומך ליבי ויוגר כבודי, הבשורי ישקול לו בטח. כי לא יסעזר נפשי לשול, לא עשיתי חסד חול לרואי שוחס. תדייני הירחי, סוי וסמוכו את פונכו, נמוי בימין חונצח. שלמה לא יססוי נא אלוהים יין יבוא יזרי. עזרי מעמדנו יויסי שמיים וארץ. הייתן למות רגלך היונום שומרך. הנה לא ינום לא ישון שמי ישראל. אדוני שמרך, אדוני צילך, יד ימינך. יום השמש לא יככו ירח ולא יבוא. אדוני ישמרך מקור ישמרס נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאצך ויחו מהטוב יד רימון. קופלן שיר המלויס ממעמקים כבוסיך אדוני. Adonai Shema b'koili Ti'eno aznecho kashuvo l'kol tachanuno Im Adonai tishmor yo Adonai miyamoy Kim chas lichol Imanti voreh Kibis Adonai kibiso nafshi V'lidvamo yocholti Nafshi Adonai shoymrim laboyker Shoymrim laboyker Yacheh Yisrael Adonai Kim Adonai Yachesed V'abeimoy fidu Oh, Yites Yisrael Mikol Avonu Yisrael
Yisrael David, and no oil so, especially Yavitzei Amnei Menuchas Yaneleni, Nafshi Shevi Yacheni Magat Tzedek Man Shemoy, Gam Ki Yelech Begeit Almoves, Leiro Kiatei Modi, Shivtecho Mishantecho Hemi Nechamuni, Tav Fon HaShulchan Neged Tzoroi, Shante B'Shem Roshi Kosti V'Voya, Achta B'Chesed Yifuni Kol Yimei Chayo, Shavti Beis Adinoi L'Oirech Yomim. All coming together, Give Kov Dachrin, Rabbi Micha Gruber ben Baruch, Rabbi Micha, as we all knew him, was a Ben Torah his whole life. He was always constantly learning, talking and learning. He was very strong in Zamuna B'tochen and constantly always had a positive look on everything. Chidah Sakasha, Gini Shulchan Aruch says, Shvisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid, Uklal Gadol B'Torah, B'Maylas HaTzadikim, Sh'af L'Fanav Elikim. Person has to look his life, Shvisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid. Baruch is only in front of us, Yerushalayim. The end of Shulchan Aruch ends off. The Tov like Mishnah Talmud. Erste Chidah. The Cheretz Shnei Afachim, two opposites. Shvisa Hashem like the summit. You always have to be scared. The Baruch Hashem is watching everything. And then says Tov like Mishnah. Dog is a teretz, but the Chassam Sofer, the Drasha says, a person has to be Tov like Mishnah Talmud, and a person has to be constantly b'simcha. That's only, he says, the Chassam Sofer, his whole life is also Shvisa Hashem like the Summit. It's not a stira. A person has to realize, no matter what his situation is, he's constantly in the hands of Rabbeinu Shalom. And you have to have the Amunah B'tochen. Micha, The many years I knew him, it was Frisha Hashem like the summit. Never complained. Always a positive outlook in life. Especially the last few years. He was a Chayil Mesukin. Always tell him to Simcha when he used to meet him. He used to always smile. He had a good word to say. Not once did I hear him complain about his situation. You know, the Gemara says, there are Lamav of Tzaddikim in the world. If there's any one of the Lamav of Tzaddik in Chicago, it was Micha. He was so strong as a Bentaya with Yerushalayim. But he couldn't do it without his Eshes Chayil. She was completely Ibigegeben to her husband Micha. Micha was able to live to these years. It was only because of her. He was able to have two wonderful daughters who had the highest regard of Kibbut Av for their father. He was able to have a son-in-law, Nassan, who was more like a son. He was always there when it was necessary. There's a lot more to say. Bilo Maus Netzach Amocha Hashem Dima Ve'al Kol Panim.
When I was asked to give the Hesped, it was mentioned to me that one of the reasons they wanted me to be Maspid is because of the close relationship that I had with Rabbi Micha. It was true. We constantly, even when he was sick, be on the phone, exchanged the Torah. Before that, sometimes he would discuss with me the Yom that he was learning, the Shurim that he was giving, the topics that he was discussing. I think, but it's even more than that. Our relationship goes back a long time. And really, to understand Micha, you have to know him from when he's still a boy in yeshiva. Because Chazal tell us constantly about Moshe and Aaron, about Yosef. Who Moshe and Aaron? Who Yosef? Irregardless of the situation they were, irregardless of what period their lives were, they were the same person. It could be different situations. And I could say about Rabbi Micha, not only in the different periods of time, but in the different roles that he had. It was all consistent. He was a devoted friend, a devoted husband, a devoted parent, a devoted grandparent, a devoted teacher to those who he gave shiurim, a devoted friend to everybody that he met. But all of that was part of his devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Brisker Rav would say, love that one has to a relative has to be part of the love that one has to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rabbi Micha, the Brisker Rav could say that, but Rabbi Micha could also say it. It was all part of that same thing. And but I think when I'm being maspid now, I'm not only being maspid in that role as being a close friend of Rabbi Micha, but I feel like I am a shaliach for my father's Zatzal, who was Rabbi Micha's Rebbe, I would say his Rebbe Muvak. I remember at Rabbi Micha's Ufrev, the speech that my father gave. To him that was like a yontif. And when he talked about a boy from Tennessee coming to be such a London, such a Talmud Chacham, my father saw that as a symbol of the change of America. What was the difference between the European Jews and the American Jews? The European Jews, it was from the inside out. And the American Jews, of course, a lot was accomplished, but it starts from the outside in. With Rabbi Micha, it was from the inside out. It wasn't just what he did. It was who he was. My father would always mention about when Reb Zalman, the brother of Reb Chaim Volozhiner, who was perhaps the closest Talmud of the Gra. Of course, the Gra used Reb Chaim as his agent, so to say. But in terms of closeness, Reb Zalman was probably the closer Talmud of the Gra. Died at a young age, Reb Zalman. My father said at Reb Zalman's Levaya, the Maggid of Vilna, you have to understand, the Maggid of Vilna meant you were one of the greatest Gaonim in Lithuania at that time. That Reb Zalman said, that the Maggid said, he mentioned the Gemara that Shmuel said that his knowledge of astronomy was so great that he understood the pathways of all the stars, like he understood the streets of his own city. He says, but there's one thing he didn't understand. And there seems to be a machlokas, what that Gemara has reference to, but according to Smeni, it has reference to comets. He didn't understand comets. And the Mashgiach, I think my father said his name was Reb Zev of Vilna, said that Reb Zalman, Neshama, was like a comet. What's the pshat? He says, a comet, Lefim Arasayim, it comes from afar. It's not part of our regular solar system. It comes from afar. He says, most neshamas, they're part of our time. But there is certain individuals that their neshama is from a different time. It's not from our time. And my impression is that Rabbi Micha had that type of neshama. His neshama was from a different time. He wasn't one of us. He was like a comet that was sent into this area. But from a different time period. He was like the Jews of Europe. It was from the inside out. It was who he really was. Torah tells us about when the Nesiim gave the carbon at the dedication of the of the dedication of the Mishkan, the Keshen and Mizbeach. So each day, another Nasi gave it. One day, first day, was Nachshon ben Aminadav. It says, Nachshon ben Aminadav Lamata Yehuda, no titles, just Nachshon ben Aminadav. And then it says, the second day, it was Nisano ben Sur, Nasi Lamata Yisachar. The Nisano ben Sur, who was the Nasi of Mata Yisachar. And on the third day, it's Nasi Livnei Zvulun Eliyah ben Chelon. Three different, how do we understand it? But there are certain individuals, whether they have a position or they don't have a position, their greatness is in who they are. The position doesn't play a role. And there are individuals who, they're great, but they give greatness to their position. And there are people, I know, who accomplish a lot, but their greatness comes from their position. Rabbi Micha, his greatness wasn't just what he did. His greatness was who he was. There are people that teach, and he gave lots of shiurim. Even though later on in life he didn't have an official position, but he taught Torah orally. But the greatest teaching was the teaching that very few are able to give. And that was by virtue of the way he was. Those who knew him, all of us who knew him, to a large degree, we are his Talmidim. And what we have to do to remain, the zikaron for him would be to let his character traits, his dedication to Torah, everything he did was Torah. You know, Rishonim ask a question, how do we make Birchas Torah? There's a hefsek all the time. And the answer is there's halachas everywhere, wherever you go, some Rishonim say. That's in theory. But Rabbi Micha, it was his whole personality. His whole personality was Torah. There was no hefsek. And to whatever degree we can't reach his level. He's from a different generation. But to whatever degree we can, we should try to follow his path. From us, it will be from the outside in, but from him, it was from the inside out.
Amen.
My sister-in-law, Rabbi Barbara Gruber, called me to ask me that I should speak. I didn't say to her, but how can I speak? I'm not ready to speak. The ikr that I want to give over is, what are we going to take away? What are we going to take away from the life of Yerucham Micha David, Zecher Tzaddik Kodesh Avrocha? What are we going to take away from it? So I want to start in the beginnings. Rabbi Arthur Levine, Zechron Avrocha, from Chicago. Came to my parents' house. He became the rabbi in Memphis, Tennessee. He came to my parents' house, must be in this, I'm not sure exactly what year this was. Micha was probably either 13 or 14 years old. Mr. and Mrs. Gruber. Now it's very interesting. My father, Zichron Bracha, was the president of a shul called Bethel Emeth in Memphis, Tennessee. He's the one, my father had a big kesher with Rabbi Arthur Levine. So it's not just a stam kesher out of the blue. It's all leading up to a tachlis. My father had a very good kesher with him. And when Micha was either 13 or 14 years old, he came to the house, our house in Memphis, and Mrs. Gruber, Mr. Gruber. I want Micha to go to Chicago, to Skokie, to learn in the yeshiva. 13, 14 years old. Let him wait, he's too young. My brother was crying. 13, 14, yeah, such a she'ifa, such a bikish, such a want to go away from home from this. It's a pella tzuma. This whole story is a pella. The world is a pella. So I want to just mention Reb Zedel Epstein, Zecher Tzaddik Kodesh Livrocha. I can remember where I was, almost exactly where I was sitting in Torah Or. Can't tell you what year this was. This was many, many years ago. He was the mashgiach. Reb Zedel Epstein was the mashgiach. Reb Scheinberg in Torah Or. I believe he was a Talmud of Reb Shimon Shkop. And he was speaking about, after the Chet of the Egel, it's a posik. It's a posik in Kisis, I believe. Let's see if I can find it over here. Posik reads, says, the oil moed was taken chutz l'machne after the chet. Chutz ha'machne, harchik min ha'machne, the koro lo oil moed. V'hoya kol mevakesh Hashem, yeitzei el oil moed Hashem chutz ha'machne. Reb Zedel Epstein was magdir on kol mevakesh. The Rabbanu Shem wants a mavakesh. By my brother, Zecher Tzaddik Kodesh Livrocha, there couldn't have been a bigger mavakesh. He's crying at 13, 14 years old. Mother, Daddy, I want to go. And I remember even going to the train station. There's no airplanes, we don't even going on an airplane. And he's sitting there, we were waving to him goodbye. And he's sitting in one of the train cars, looking out the window. Ein mavakesh gadol b'mitzvah. Number one. Number two, I called up on the way to the airport, when I came in from Lakewood to go to the airport. And I called up Reb Nochem Eisenstein. Why did I call Reb Nochem Eisenstein? Reb Nochem, I'm sure you were in the Chabur with my brother in Skokie. You had a kesh with him. And by the way, I heard many years ago, a lot of the Skokie Oilam went to Reb Nochem. The biggest Maggid Shir says the biggest Shir, we'll say in the biggest Shir, the Noch. The Noch and Pitzov and Sefer Tzaddik Shel Rocha, the Eidim from Reb Chaim. And I was told that the Skoki Chabura was the spitz of the Mir Yeshiva. A lot of them went to the Mir Yeshiva. But Nochem, his brother Reb Erel, and Zecher Tzaddik Shel Rocha. My brother ended up going to LA to be a Maggid Shir by Reb Simcha Wasserman and Zecher Tzaddik Shel Rocha. And I asked him, tell me about my brother. Tell me, what do you remember in the Chabura? What do you remember? So he said to me, he's chlorikite in every sugya. He understand, it was so chlor. He could give it over and give it over with such a chlorikite. That's number one, he said. It wasn't just open up a Gemara and learning, and maybe Rashi Toises were showing them. What is Rashi, what's the machlikas here? The chlorikite. And then he's speaking about his midos. You know, you have a lot of people that are, could be a, say, Talmidei Chachamim, Lamdanim. Where do you find in one person? And if you open up to the sixth parak in Pirkei Avos, the Mem Ches Devarim, the Torah is Niknesh Behem. The Mem Ches Devarim. Rabbi Micha Gruber, Zecher Tzaddik Rocha, you did it. You did it. You did it. The Bakosha, the Midas, the Azai Masmid. He used to come home, Pesach in the summer, he used to come home to Memphis. He came home for the Sidurim, and for the, I think it was the whole Pesach, and he came home for the summer, and the rest of the time he lived in Skopje all the way, in the yeshiva. And I remember, whether it was in the dining room table, whether it was in the living room sitting on a couch, he always had a sefer. I never saw him without a sefer. And I remember by my bar mitzvah parsha, Rabbi Arthur Levine was the rabbi still. And in my bar mitzvah parsha, in my speech, I'm sure the rabbi would like me to follow in the footsteps of my brother, but I can't commit to that. Micha, I made a terrible mistake. I didn't go in your footsteps. That's the biggest charata I could ever have in my life. You did it. You shined like a diamond lighting the world. You did it. And it's very interesting when I was in LA. I was in LA not too long ago, and I went over to Reb Fassman. It was Mamala Mokom in the Lakewood Kollel in LA, his father. So when Reb Simcha Wasserman decided to go to Eretz Yisrael, so where's me going to do? The yeshiva's being sold over to somewhere else. So the Rosh HaKollel, Reb Chaim Fassman, Zecher Tzaddik Shel Rocha, from Beis HaTalmud, asked my brother to learn Chavrusa with him. Rosh HaKollel, Beis HaTalmud, Reb Chaim Fassman. For whatever reason, that didn't work out, and he ended up going to Reb Simcha Wasserman. Now it's very interesting, whenever I would come to Chicago, it's a very important Nakuda, and I would come see my brother on my way back to Eretz Yisrael from Memphis, and my sister-in-law, the Rebbetzin of Rabbi Micha David, Rabbi Micha David Zechron Bracha, always took me to her parents' house before I left. And I'll never forget, when something is so important, or such a roshan, it sticks in your memory like yesterday. I remember her father, Zecher Tzaddik Choshev Baruch, Mordechai Schreibman, whenever I went in that house, he always was learning and had a sefer open. Always. So it's a very interesting shidduch over here. Micha David, and Be'er Schreibman. It's a very interesting shidduch. And I remember that when his Rebbetzin was, the story that I heard was coming back from BJJ, and Reb Chaim Baruch is going to the Mir Yeshiva, which he was there, I think, for 5 years straight. So you can imagine that Chabur and Skokie, Reb Chaim Baruch Schreiber, was a big Muslim, in a big London, in the Mir Yerushalayim. So, my sister-in-law coming from the BJJ sees her brother, Reb Chaim, come to the Mir, and she's going back to Chicago. When you're going out on Shidduchim, she's going out on Shidduchim. You get a Shidduch read with Micha Gruber. He's the biggest masbid in the Skokie Yeshiva. What do you mean? You had a Hazai Chabura, the Mir Yeshiva, there were the Spitz, there were that Chabura in Skokie. Micha was Hazai Masbid. And you hear from the other, from Rabbi Moshe Soloveitchik, Shlita, it didn't leave him. And what Moshe spoke about, whenever he came home from this, okay, there's a halach issue. What did Reb Aaron say? What did Reb Aaron say? We kept hearing Reb Aaron. This was Yeshua ben Nun with Moshe Rabbeinu. How do you, it's a recipe. It's an unbelievable recipe. I just want to bring out one other point that are important. When they were getting ready for the transplant, 21, 22 years ago, so they went to Miami. That's where the transplant, got the Zakas. And so when he got to Miami, it's the time before they call him up to be prepped for the transplant. So somebody asked my brother, somebody that is having a hard time in life, would he learn with this person? He'll even get paid for it. But he'll learn with him. I don't want any money. So we'll call this person Chaim. Then he gets a beep, or whatever, how he got the message, and he's getting ready to be rolled in to be prepped for a liver transplant, which is basically 12 hours of surgery, a delicate surgery, life and death surgery. Barbara, I have a chalus with Chaim. Please call Chaim up and tell him I can't learn with him. How does anybody think about this when he's going into a life-threatening liver transplant? How is that possible? How is it possible? So obviously, his midas, his Yerushalayim, his devek, his Torah was so great. If he never always had a sefer, never without learning, unless it was a mitzvah, yiyafshar yedei acherim. This was his godless. So he's not written up into this and not written up in this. In Shemayim, he's written up in every which way. So in the reality is that in his Rebbetzin, so it makes sense, a shidduch that comes from a Schreibman family to a Rabbi Micha David Zichron Baruch. It makes sense. All the sense in the world. Rabbi Hashem had it all planned out. And he had Reb Arthur Levine come, and they was sent into Chicago, and that's where the Schreibmans lived. And everything had to be like a beautiful tapestry. Every piece and every piece and every piece. And it's Einaklach. I had the schus, three of us sitting here today. You're not talking about just a masmid. You're not just talking about a London. You're not just talking about Midas in a Yerushalayim. You're talking about Dori Doris. Dori Doris. And I want to just say over to the Mishpacha, and two beautiful daughters, Shalamis, Penina, Bez Hashem, should find the right zivik, have the right siyata d'shmaya. But when I see these enaklach, and I see on their faces, you see the Yerushalayim, you see the panim, you see, the seeds were planted. They were planted, and they were nourished. I think Rabbi Rucham speaks, I'm going to finish just in a second. Yerucham speaks about how does a person reach shleimus? How do they reach shleimus? We all have different milas. My milas are different, yours, and yours are different than mine. Take those milas and build them. The seeds were all planted, and they were nurtured, they were watered, and all the nourishment they needed to grow. Take what Yerusha that is laid out for you, sign from your Zaidi. That's why we have a Ramdas letter over here. He had the Azayah Choshvayid to be a Shidduch L'Shlamis. Take the seeds that were already planted and already watered and already started to sprout and build on it. The biggest covet you could have for your Zaidi and the biggest aliyah in Shemayim, it's like the Sarim, I believe the Sarim, the Sarim. There is a bigger aliyah, achamisa. That means every single mitzvah that you do, every time you open a sefer, every time you open a gemara, every time you do a chesed, it's all, the seeds were planted. Your Zaidi planted it for you. Take it. Keep nourishing it. Keep building. Not mansions that are made out of brick and stone. Mansions that are going to go to Shemayim. That the Rabbi Shem is going to help Klal Yisrael, which is in a Tzara. We need all of you to build and build. And Rabbi Micha Gruber, I just want to mention one last thing about my sister-in-law. I know she doesn't like it, but I think it's important to mention. He couldn't have done this without Barbara Schreiber. He couldn't have done it. He couldn't have done it. I've never seen or never heard or never read anywhere somebody could have such fingers on a pulse. The cold too, every movement, every breath, she had her fingers on the pulse. And she knew what to do. It started from that time it was read. Bez Hashem, it should be a Gantz and Aliyah for the Neshama. And if we could just keep this in mind, Achamisa is a very big zman for the Neshama to go higher and higher.
Many years ago, shortly after we moved to Chicago, Yaakov's husband, Shlita Magachenskoki Yeshiva, told me the following. I was sitting in my house one Shabbos afternoon, and the window was open. All of a sudden, I hear someone outside in the street singing, Avinu, Avraham, HaMerachem, the same believing. I went to the window. I saw Yoshua the Nifta, Rabbi Micha David, and Baruch, walking with your twins, hand in hand down the street. He was singing as he held their hands. This is who my Shver was, as we heard when we know. He was a Masmid Nifkel, a great Talmud Chacham, medactic b'halacha, and his whole she'ifa, his whole nachas and leben was to raise banim of bnei banim oiskim the Torah of the mitzvahs. And that's what he leaves behind today. Tati, you should know. Shali v'shala shachai. It's your excitement for every shtickle time. Your negunim of Torah, your shemaim, you meet this tigers that you showed our children that enable Shalamas and myself to raise Baruch Hashem Yiddish Kinder out there Chatzar Vayira. You let Tante Penina, who mirrors your Midas Typhus, your Edelkeit, and she sat by your bedside saying, Tati, thank you for the Torah. Thank you for all the Torah you taught us. She would say, thank you for shoes. Thank you for all the Torah you taught us. That's what they took away from you. Even when you could barely move, you were about to be put on a respirator. When you talked and learning with the boys. Baruch Baruch Yosef Shlomo. Well, you heard that he had a chavrusa, a good chavrusa, or a kasha with a Rebbe, or that a Rebbe came back to yeshiva, wasn't well, it lifted you up. That's what gave you, we saw it b'chush. That's what gave you koyach. A new koyach in Chicago, that's what brought you some holes on you perked up. Baruch Hashem, the Rabbi Shalom, was mazaki you. You still had a chance to meet. Unser Teil Chassan Daniel Yehuda. And he was so besimcha. That b'shatoyv b'tzlachas b'tzashem. His Techana will marry Talmud Chacham. Isaac b'Torah. Amidst. That was your biggest simcha. I just want to share one story now about Dikdik B'Halacha. I remember one of the first, I think it was the first Simchas Torah, I was walking to shul with my Shver, coming to Vagud Meyer, and I mentioned to him, I meant it as a piece of information that when we made our kofis in Eretz Yisrael, the Brisky Yeshivas used to get together, so the shul made a condition with us. We could use the Sefer Torah provided we put garbage bags under the covers. You shouldn't get sweated up. I see my Shver, when he thought of the halacha, he's looking up. And I said, what do they do with the garbage bags? Do they have it enough to Shmishi Kedusha or not? This was on his mind, as you heard from his good chaver, Meshel Meji. This is the way he lived. That was his concern. The last couple of weeks, Tati, you kept saying, I can't go to the chasna. I don't have a suit. I'm going to buy a suit. Tati, you're going to be by the chasna because the state, as the Zayd is coming out of Gan Eden. And not only you're going to be there, you're going to be wearing the nicest suit of everyone there. You're going to be wearing the suit that you earned in this world with your Torah, Ma'asim Tovim. You're going to be wearing the keser, the crown of tzaddikim yoshvim, v'atrisayim b'rashayim, the nicest suit of all. We just laid Pasha's Truma. well known that if Shachayim and Ashich HaKadosh say that the Mishkan is only a dugma, it's a model for the Mishkan that every Yid should build in himself. So I asked my Kindlech on Shabbos, the Shabbos table, so what are the donations for that Mishkan? If we're supposed to build a Mishkan, where's the donation? Where's the Zav? Where's the Kesef? And I told them it's the Torah, it's the Vasam Toivim, that's our donation to our Mishkan. Tati, you built yourself into the most beautiful Mishkan. But the Eibishter wanted, there should be only Zavtar. The Mishkan should have only pure gold. And through the tremendous Yisurim, Rabbi say it's indescribable. Especially the last few weeks he couldn't even eat. There was no gashnis left to him. B'shas Petira, I was thinking, this is Kulay Neshama. Mizukak Shivasayim. Pure Zav, tar, nothing else, just Neshama, that's all that was left. Arena Mishkan. Mommy, Baruch Chaim Tovim, you were the one who gave your entire Leva Nefesh. And it's not a guzma. You gave your life for Tati. Ad Kalai Sakayches Mamish. I came to the hospital a week ago. She was on the bed like, literally, no kaiches. But she still went fighter. The vow says is on. They didn't leave one stone unturned. I'm going to change that. In your case, you didn't leave a grain of sand unturned. If you could make something a little easier and give Tati another few days, a few minutes, every single thing, there was nothing that escaped you. Whatever you could do for him, because you got to have it. The Chazon Ish says that Atzalas Nefashis works, not pshat. When I do a Maisa, I save the person. I can't change the Rabban Shalom's Gzeira. You put a person into such a matzav. So he says, how does it work? He explains the mechanics. That when a Yid is Mekayim Leisamet al Dam Reyacha, when a Yid helps save another person, the Eibishter sees that, and it's Ma'ira Rachmim, Shemayim, and it changes the Gzeira on the person. Mommy, you through your actions, you were Ma'ira Rachmim. It's well known, it's unheard of that a person that had such a liver transplant and had so much, Shalakit Dar Chatan, it didn't make any sense. To come with a respirator, just the extra 6 years you gave him, as Rabbi first said, you gave him an extra 6 years. I thought it was the Rabbi Shalom, but the Rabbi Shalom did it because you were my with the Rachman to bring it about. And 2 weeks ago I thought to myself, who knows how much Rachman you were Myra for the city of Chicago through your Meister? Who knows how many Xeris you changed? We're living in a world with so many Xeris. Who knows how many Xeris you changed for Klal Yisrael? We'll tell you the reactions. I must thank in the name of the family. I don't want to leave anybody out. So many people helped. The name Rabbi Micha Gruber was on everybody's lips. So many people davened, and we appreciate all the tefillahs. And my shver appreciated every tefillah. No tefillah goes wasted. So many people did things for him because he was so beloved. But I must mention Rabbi Suli Matzliach from Refuah 311 and Rabbi Aaron Wolf, the Chicago Mitzvah campaign. He's not going to be happy with me, but I told him once that he came to the hospital, I said, I'm not sure if he is the Malach Raphael or he's just as Chavrusim, but he definitely goes with him. Mind-boggling, day and night, for everything. Alp, Ramesha Soloveitchik, and Rabbi Micha Gruber, Shlita the speakers room. They spoke to him every single day. They didn't talk to him and give him chizuk. Rabbi Micha sometimes 3 times a day, always making sure he had the zmanim and everything he needed. And we're asking all those that daven for him, maybe do something with Nishmasai. Rabbi Micha Gruber, Baruch. This morning it hit me. Perhaps I just suggest. Everybody knows, especially this base medrash, the walls are made. How we sat over there in the back. He never uttered a word other than tefillah and Torah after davening. He was makbid Yeshmer Abba Kedusha. But unfortunately, the last few years, he didn't have the opportunity to answer Kedusha, Yeshmer Abba, due to his sickness. Perhaps, I was thinking, if we could be mechazik and answering Kedusha, Yeshmer Abba with a missile merkavona, really neither, mechazik that Indian, it should be as close to be mashal all the Kedushas and Yeshmer Abbas that he would have wanted to answer. In the name of my wife, Shlamis, Mami, Penina, all my entire kinderlach, the Einakoch. I love them so much. I need to love them. We ask you, Tadi, for Mechila. We were not mechaber you the way we should have been, because you were such a honor. You didn't ask for any comment. We didn't do enough for you. It's not easy to follow Mommy's shoes, but we tried to help and we were able to. The bet mech for Mechila. Please be a Melech Yosher for all of us. For Mommy, she can continue going. They ain't a such a habit for her. They want to have their puppy. They want to love their puppy. And she has such a love for them. Please go for Penina. That's a job. Please go to the Kisei HaKavod together with your Irish vlogger, Uncle Chaim, Zochar Levracha, who's such a metzapik Yeshua, and go to the Eibishter and Betzich, like Kisei HaKavod, that we should be Zoicha to the Gula Shlema, Bila, Mavis al Netzach, Amach Shem Dim, Yakal Pan, and Lemer Amen. I asked my son, and one of the Einaklach to say a few words, and then Rabbi Micha Gruber say the call.
Mi yitem lanu tumorasai, mi yitem lanu tumorasai. Zaidi, as your oldest grandson, it's mutar me to be mas with you. But how could I? You pulled through so many times. How could I have known that this would be the last? But Hashem has His chesbonos. We wish that you would be able to dance by His techanas chasana, but it's not to be. I want to speak about Zaidi Simchas HaChaim that was tangible to all those who came in contact with him. V'simachta b'chol ha'toiv, Chazal say, ein toiv el ha'torah. The amount of good that he saw in his life, despite all that he went through, was only due to the Simcha Shel Torah that coursed through his veins. Zaidi said of Bart, it was with excitement. Every fiber of his body gave that impression. Whenever Zaidi would tell me of art, it would almost always be from his Rabbi Micha from Skokir Baron, and he would also always say his own chiddush that he was mechadish. And how he appreciated saying over from my father's Zaydus, Rabbi Yosef Baumgarten, in the Sefer Padus Yosef that he had, and from the Zayda the Chassam Sofer, even though he himself wasn't an Einikel, but he loved saying over from his son-in-law's Zaydus to my father and his grandsons. I was thinking that anyone who ever heard Zayd's answering machine. The sweetness, the ahava that you felt when he said with such a heart, have a wonderful day. I'm sure it touched many people. There's much more to say, but time is short. Zaydi, it's time to sagen sich with you. On behalf of the Eneklach, we ask you, Mechila, if we ever began your covet. B'yimei L'tz Yosher, for Bobby, who stood by your side, who fought for you with extraordinary koiches. Anyone I spoke to who knew you couldn't understand how you could be such a giver. The Eibusher should give you weiter koiches to move on. Tante Panina, who cared about you and cared for you so much. My father and my mother, from Uncle Eliezer and Aunt Marsha, who have a lot of cars to toif to you. And for all those close to you. Go to the Kisei HaKavod, together with your parents, Zaydi and Bobby Leah Schreibman, Uncle Shlomi, Ubefrat Uncle Chaim, who's a Chad B'Doirei, who lived his life yearning for the ultimate Yeshua, and beg the Eibishter to bring us Mashiach Tzedkeinu, Bila Mavos Lanetzach, Mocha Hashem Alekim Dimo Me'al Kol Bama.
Amen. Shochem Amen. Am Tzemel Nechon Nechon Kaber Kishkina. Amalos Kadoshim Kaverz Yizar Roiker Masirim. Es Nishmas Yivagalik Ben Baruch Shalach Yomo. Bavur Shinot Yitzhak Bianas Kavas Nishmaso. V'ganein Zeim Nefaso. V'chein Balach Yasir V'sesik Nefal Amen. Yitzro Yitzro Reimas Nishmaso. Adonai Nahaso. Yanoha Mishkavol Nomar Amen.
Amen. Friends, this concludes the Levaya here in the shul. The full will take place immediately at Waldheim Cemetery at the Aguda section. For those interested in joining in procession to the cemetery, one will be forming right outside the shul along Peterson, facing south, and eventually we'll make a right heading, we'll be on Peterson going east, making a right on St. Louis heading south, eventually on to Waldheim. While in procession, please make sure you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker that can be placed on the inside portion of your windshield vehicle. For additional measures of safety, please make sure you obtain a magnetic flag to place on the rooftop. Please make sure your lights and your hazard lights, your bright lights and your hazard lights are on at all times. Please stay as closely to the car in front of you as safety permits and avoid talking on your cellular device while in the procession. On return from the cemetery, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Gruber residence that enters the 6207 North Central Park. Just as additional information, Rabbi Gruber's sister Marsha will only be here. Mrs. Wolf will just be here today. Those times, as well as contributions in Rabbi Gruber's chus to the Chicago Mitzvah campaign can be found on the folder that you see on the way in. For those who are on the live stream, that information is on the funeral home website. Thank you, friends. Please go directly to your cars.